you can be successful from a traditional sense, like building a business, making a lot of money, but there's so many other things that crumble around you, your health, both your physical health as well as your mental and emotional health, and of course your relationships. You can certainly win in business and still have a great relationships if you're really being intentional about those, how you start the morning in periods of rest, how you to make sure you're taking breaks, how you doing meditation, doing walks, taking care of your health. Definitely will make you a better person and make your relationships will better. You'll be better connected, right, as husband and wife and with your kids. That's why it's important. Like for me, the walks. My morning walk is sometimes in my morning walk, I'll start with say, okay, what do I want to process? Thriving in Tandem. It's a podcast for you, the married entrepreneur that wants to win in business and marriage at the same time.
Welcome to Thriving in Tandem.
Hey, Thriving in Tandem family. Welcome back to this week's episode.
Hi, you guys.
And today we're going to geek out on the science of better performance in your business.
And who doesn't want that?
And we've actually found some research, real research, scientific research that backs up our premise of not just thriving in tandem but basically what's underneath that is work-life balance, how to succeed in your business, but make sure you're prioritizing home and the benefits of being intentional about your relationships and getting rest. And when I say rest, it's not just about sleeping. It's just about stepping away from your business and not just working in the business, but just thinking about the business and responding to business issues, like whether it's text or emails, but basically when you're home, you should be present, right? Because we hear so many excuses how we don't have time to, really be intentional with our family, with our marriage, our kids and all that. But the reality is we all have some measure of time to be with our spouse and the kids, because it's not like you literally are working 24/7 in the business. It's just that it feels that way because you're constantly thinking about it and doing something that's business related, right?
And I think that doesn't necessarily mean we're being productive just because we're doing something, thinking, we don't being productive with our time.
Yeah. And so there was might have been, I don't think it was a podcast episode, but I think it was one of my weekly emails that I wrote. And I was doing a little bit of research and, I was looking at the benefits of rest and I came across this topic or this term called DMN, Default Mode Network. And it's actually a kind of a mode in your brain in which you are not working. You're not doing a task. So like when you're in, there's two primary modes in your brain is task mode and default mode. And a task mode is when you're always thinking and doing something. So business, your work, right? Whenever you're engaged in your work or in any kind of task, even if it's a hobby, if you're building a tree house or whatever, but when you're engaged in doing something, you're in task mode. But then there's the other one when you're default mode network is when you're kind of in almost like a restful state. And so that's the thing we're going to talk about today, because the default mode network is actually so productive for you because that's when you are the most creative and can get the best ideas.
I totally agree with you. And for me, that can look like having fun. And it doesn't have to be big, long spurts of something.
Yeah. So we're actually going to dig into the science a little bit. I'm not going to get too geeky because that'll be boring, but just really to reinforce why you need to turn it off every once in a while. You need to be very intentional about turning it off. And when you do that, you're actually going to be more productive because let's face it, when you're in stressed out mode, I think if you're honest, that whenever you're just constantly working and just stressing about business, that it's very hard to come up with great ideas. In fact, our best ideas come in our quiet times, where there's, when we're quiet, we can daydream a little bit or even think about past experience to kind of maybe look back at some of the mistakes that were made and process through why do we make mistakes? What are things I can do differently that'll be better next time? Thinking and visioning about the future, doing brainstorming, even processing emotions, like why are you stressed? And actually when you're stressed out, to have those quiet times, and when you go for a walk or when you do a hobby or you play golf or whatever, you actually de-stress basically, right? And so and those are the DMN modes. That's the default mode network. When you're in that state, your brain is rested and actually can come up with great ideas.
Yeah, because when it's not and you're stressed, for me, it takes me longer to do things and come up with ideas. It's like, it just seems like it slows down so many things.
Yeah, so we wanna get out of the what they call the task positive network, TPN, and be more in a default mode network, DMN. And so why does this even matter for you, right? Because that is the well, anyways, let's go back to the task positive network. That's the part of the brain that's responsible for focus, problem solving, and execution. So when you're zeroed in on the task at hand, you go into that TPN, that task positive network, and that's very beneficial, of course. The problem is, most entrepreneurs spend the majority of their time in that mode, which means you're not going to be able to have that creativity to not just solve a problem, because we talked about, because in task positive network you're in problem solving mode, but when you're in that default mode, network mode, the creativity comes up with even better solutions, because sometimes when you're solving a problem, it's just solving it just enough, good enough, but the creativity of how to create even a better system, a better solution, that comes from periods of rest.
Well, and I think for me, I have to be intentional. Like the other day, I was doing all this, you know, had some stuff I need to be super focused on, and I found this spiral graph because I'm going through stuff that we're getting rid of, and I thought, oh my gosh, I had a bigger version of this when I was a child, so I intentionally got that out and started playing with it because it brought back memories, great childhood memories. And it got me thinking on the other side of my brain, the creative side. And I'm like, oh, this is so much nicer because I'm having fun. Or sometimes I'll turn on some music and it doesn't take long. I just have my own little dance party. And for me, that sparks some creativity. So it could be just short little things of things that you love to do that kind of gets you in a different frame of mind.
Yeah, so you got to get that de-stress. I remember years ago we were in, I think it was Ecuador of all places. We are doing an entrepreneurship workshop, and I remember afterwards this lady came up to me and she has a beauty salon, and she was talking about how she was talking about her debt. Number one, she was in a lot of debt, and she was talking about how she wasn't as creative as she used to be. Now she's in a beauty salon, so I mean, creativity is that's that's not like 100% of your business, right? People come to you because of your creative eye in doing their hair or nails or whatever. And so, anyways, as she's talking, I asked her, I said, how long have you been in this level of debt? She said, I forgot exactly the term, but anyways, she said something like 5 years. And then I asked her, when was the last time you felt you were most creative self, right? And she said, about 5 years. So I said, you need to do everything possible to pay off the debt, or at least pay it off down to a level of comfortability, because that stress is impeding your creativity. You solve that, you do that, your creativity will come back. But that level of stress, right, is really hard to be creative. So she's definitely in TPN, right? That what do you call it? That task positive network. She's addressing the problem. She's trying to figure out everything she can to, you know, get more creative, I guess is kind of what she was doing. But the reality is, in order for her to get more creative, she needed to get the stress out of her life. And so when you're in that mode, right, your creativity declines, your perspective narrows, meaning you're so laser focused that you can't see outside possibilities. So you'd have a very narrow perspective as opposed to having kind of the broad perspective. And that's when you can see options.
Well, and I think it's frustrating too when you think of creativity as a task
Yeah.
as opposed to creating some freedom in your life so that creativity can come. Because
Yeah.
sometimes it's when you're least expect it, like when I'm in the shower.
Yep. And that's when the best ideas come. Like for me, on the toilet.
So we met this one gal, we were on her podcast, and she says she has child paint, and she puts it in her shower, and when she gets all these great ideas, she uses her finger and she writes the idea on the wall so she doesn't forget it.
Yeah. That's good.
And then later on, it just rinses off, so it's not staining your walls or anything.
Yeah. So see if this is you, right? Um, has your creativity declined? Are you kind of like have tunnel vision? So in other words, your perspective narrows. Do you have decision fatigue? Like, are you just tired of having to make a decision? And it's just your stress rising, right? Just those are four key areas. And that's when you know you're entirely in that TPN net mode, as opposed to when you're in that default mode network, having that time to kind of sit back and relax a little bit. That's when your creativity goes up, your strategic thinking also goes up, your ability to learn, even just ability to process emotions and deal with stuff and just envisioning. That's when you're going to be in that. When you're in that mode, that's when you're going to be at your best.
Mhm.
So again, so when are we at your best? So what else, honey, when are you feel you're at your best as far as creativity or learning or even getting stuff done?
I love being out in nature. That seems to really spark my creativity. I know there's just so much beauty. I mean, across the street, there's this house that has these beautiful roses. We walk by every day. I smell them. Just little things like that really seem to spark it for me. Doing something I love, whether it be my cricket.
Yeah, in fact, just 2 episodes ago, episode 245, we talked about the daily habits of the rich and famous, and we did zero in on how they started the morning and how they intentionally built in periods of rest meaning just non-work stuff, whether it's working out, taking care of their health, meditation. There's a number of things that we talked about 2 episodes ago. And so now we're just bringing now the science behind it. And you see why these high performers are so high performing. Now, you can probably give examples of some high performers that are, probably not doing not doing those things, not taking care of themselves the way they want. And certainly you can succeed, like make a lot of money, build a big business when you're just working 24/7, but you're definitely gonna on the verge of burnout, number one. We do see them crashing and burning. Also, your relationships are probably terrible.
Mhm. Yeah,
Right,
because who's going to want
we've
to be
seen that
around
we've
you?
seen that a lot, because again, the people we mentioned in episode 2 episodes ago, they're always also very family focused
Mhm.
too. I think most of them are really family focused. They wanna make sure they're taking care of their family, their spouse, their kids, and all that.
And themselves.
Yeah, so certainly you can be successful from a traditional sense, like building a business, making a lot of money, but there's so many other things that crumble around you, your health, both your physical health as well as your mental and emotional health, and of course your relationships. And so really the only way you can have it all, and some people think you can't, and I was in a conversation pretty recently, people say, "You can't have it all." I said, "Well, yeah, you can." It just looks a little bit different than what you're thinking, right? But you can certainly win in business and still have a great relationships if you're really being intentional about those, how you start the morning in periods of rest, how you to make sure you're taking breaks, how you doing meditation, doing walks, taking care of your health, all those things. That doesn't mean you still can't succeed in your business, but doing so out of periods of rest and being in that DMN mode, default mode network, more often than not, definitely will make you a better person and make your relationships will better. You'll be better connected, right, as husband and wife and with your kids. That's why it's important. Like for me, the walks. My morning walk is sometimes like in my morning walk, I'll start with say, okay, what do I want to process? And so, like sometimes whether it's going to see a client, this week, and, there's a number of issues we need to help resolve. So, what is it we want to really focus on? Or preparing for a speech, I'll kind of practice that sometimes on the walk. And so you'll really I've noticed I can get into a flow more when I'm on the walk practicing a speech than when I'm in front of the desk. So yeah, so there's a lot of just benefits in just taking a break and going out. And so for me, the walks are very important. The meditation in the morning as well, and the prayer in the morning as well. But for some reason, those walks are good because I think you're moving, your body's moving, and you are restful. I'm just walking out in nature, walking a dog. And she's got to do her business, and so taking care of that. I purposely don't bring my phone. I see so many people walking their dogs and they're just on their phone, right? I was like, man, you can't even disconnect and taking a break just for that moment, right?
And then I think to myself, I hope they don't run into me because they're not looking up. They're looking down at their
Hmm.
phone.
Yeah, I've seen that. So I purposely will not move away because I want to see how close are they going to get before they realize, hey, someone's coming approaching. I was like, geez, man. And of course, date nights. Making sure you take that time away. Like we had a couple weeks ago, we celebrated at um, Mastro's.
Yes, we had a great dinner
And,
on the
I
beach.
had to pull my
You
wife
love
away.
telling this story, honey.
I had to talk my wife into letting me take her out. And
Because it's not that I didn't want to go on a date. I did want to go on a date. I was excited with the beach. We are in the process of moving. It just seemed like there was so much to do that once you kind of get into the task oriented,
she was in task mode for sure.
that I'm like, I just want to keep going.
So here's the conversation.
Oh, here we go
We
now.
we had just got our floors done, last week or a couple weeks ago. We just got our floors done. getting prepared to, to rent it out and of course maybe potentially even sell.
And if anybody knows, if you ever got your floors done, oh my gosh, it's so dirty and dusty and stuff
And
everywhere.
and also at the end, towards the end of the week, I was on an overnighter to Dallas for an event I got invited to. So anyways, get back on Friday, and so I asked Kaylee, I was like, "Hey, what do you think about going to Mastro's? It's like a 5-star steakhouse on the beach in Malibu." So asked her, "What do you think about going to Mastro's for dinner?"
I'm like, "Oh, yeah, 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 fine."
No,
No.
she asked me, and I said, "What do you think about going to Mastro's for dinner?" And she responds, "To eat?" And I said, looked at her like, "Well, it is a restaurant, so I think that's kind of what you do there." And then their next question is, "Do we have time?" And then I said, "Well, I think we've made every dinner. Like we've eaten dinner. I don't know if we skipped a dinner ever when we're together. So I think we do have time."
No, but if you eat at home, it's just a quick little thing as
And
opposed to going to Malibu.
and she just goes, "I guess."
I'm like, "I gotta get my house back in order here. This disarray is
I'm like,
a
"Okay, well, I
lot."
don't want to have, I don't want to, have to pull you or kidnap you to go eat at a nice restaurant." And then and then she tells me that the next thing she says is, "Oh, you really want to use that gift card? Like, why that one? Why not Jamba Juice?" I go,
No, we've
"Jamba
got all
Juice?
these gift cards.
Yeah, but Jamba
I don't
Juice
know if
or
did I say Jamba Juice?
no, but the ones
Yeah,
the gift
see,
card,
I
but the
didn't
gift
say
cards,
that.
the gift cards we have are the equivalent about of Jamba Juice. It's not like maybe a $10 gift card or $25 gift card.
Well, I was
This
thinking those because 'cause they're close by, just down the
this
street.
is a $250 gift card to Mastro's. It's a 5-star restaurant, steakhouse in Malibu. And we're moving in May, a couple of months, a month and a half from now, and there's no Mastro's in Lake Norman, Charlotte area.
So you guys can
So
tell he really wanted to go.
so
Put you guys on
number
it.
one is we use it or lose it. Number two is it is $250 that I won. Well, I won it in a raffle. Right. So I'm like, yeah, let's use this, not Jamba Juice. So, anyways, all I'm to say is we had a great time. Right. And that being away and just having fun, I thought was a great time of connection.
Yeah,
Since
and in the end, it was a great celebration because all the work that we have been doing to get ready for this move, and so it was great timing.
and also looking forward to what we're going to do is the move. So, we actually made some significant accomplishments also in our business, but also preparing for the move, but also looking forward into what we're going to be doing on the East Coast and a lot of other things that are kind of in the works. And so, really, kind of a celebratory moment as well as a kind of a looking forward moment. And we had discussions about the future. So
Mhm.
that's when we just had, being away, having a sunset dinner, a great sunset dinner, and being a talk about the future and just think and dream is very productive,
Mhm.
right? We didn't have pen and paper and just writing stuff down per se, but just had fun, just kind of talking about the future.
Well, we were honoring, where we're at now because we love Pasadena in this area and all the firsts. There's so many of them that we've done here together, and I'm wanting to carry that forward to our new place because when we move, it's gonna be a lot of firsts there too, and it's gonna be fabulous.
So
Plenty of things to celebrate.
yeah, so what we encourage you to do is get into that default mode network more. In other words, disconnect from work, right? In
And we weren't
simplicity,
talking about work, we were just talking about, like what were we talking about work?
I mean, work probably came up, but it was more about thinking about where we're going to live, a lot of things to explore out there.
Right, that's what it
And
was.
there were some business opportunities that came up, but we didn't get into the nitty gritty and
Mm-mm.
details. We're keeping it high level, but just really, encompassing, talking about the future in all things in our life. And so, we weren't getting the strategy or anything like that. It was more just talking and just dreaming. And so certainly those are productive times because it really gets us unified about where we're going in the future, right? And so definitely you want to be able to spend more time in that DMN, that default mode network. Get out of that task mode all the time because you're not going to be as innovative for your business. And even not just for business, but even for your personal life, whether investments you're going to be doing or where you're going to live or how you want to structure your life and how you want to be able to be more intentional about your time with your spouse, with each other, with your kids, and whatever, and more important relationships. And even just process sometimes if you're in a kind of a stressful situation, um, getting out of that just work mode to kind of process and even talk about, because they say like when you're stressed or you're in fear or whatever, just to be able to say it out that, hey, I'm
Mhm.
stressed, hey, I'm fearful about this next step, or whatever, but just saying it and saying it to each other, it loses its power, loses its grip on you when you just speak it out. And so versus when you're most likely one, either you or your spouse are kind of like me, where you internalize everything, and that can get dangerous because the stress level just goes up and up and up. But when you're able to verbalize it, it's basically like throwing out the stress. It does something, and I think there is science behind that as well. How speaking out the fear and the stress actually reduces those hormonal levels that causes that, and so you don't want to keep that stored up, right?
Well, and then you'd be surprised. A lot of people feel the same way, so you won't feel so isolated.
Yeah. So hopefully this episode was helpful, because we talk about these things a lot, but actually now we can talk about the science behind it. And there's also performance research behind this too. We've talked about that in previous episodes. But at least this time we got into a little bit of the science. But I didn't want to get into nitty gritty because,
Yeah.
that one's going to but you can look it up, right? Just Google it, default mode network, look it up, look at the benefits of it, and then develop your own daily habits to be more in that DMN mode than you are, because most likely you're more likely in that task mode as you are in that DMN mode. So we got to get more 20 to 30% of your time in that DMN mode so that you can be more creative, but also not just that for performance in business, but also to be able to be a better spouse and parent
Mhm.
to your families.
Yeah,
Anyways,
it's interesting, like, we'll be out on a walk out in nature, and I won't even be thinking about a solution or a problem, but the solution will just come to my mind. I'm like, "Oh, wow, I wasn't even thinking about it. That's a great idea."
yeah, so go ahead and share this episode with another married entrepreneur who needs to hear this. And until next week, God bless. Thank you for listening to the Thriving in Tandem podcast. Please visit our website, marriedentrepreneur.co, for a variety of free resources to help your marriage and business succeed.
And feel free to leave us a review and share this episode with another married entrepreneur. That would mean so much to us.
See you next week.